Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Dark and Creepy. All stories are written and narrated by me, MC Allen. There we were, in the middle of the abandoned town at midday. The sun shone with blazing heat as I held the umbrella over mine and my wife's head. "So this is where your great-great-grandfather grew up?" she asked as we looked at the old, rotting settlement. "This is a place that he describes in his diary, so I suppose it is," I responded while flipping through the pages to find exactly where it specified the location, and continued. "Yeah, it says that this is the place. Just look at how he describes the mountains. It matches them perfectly." "Let's go see if we can find the old mine up there. It'd be pretty cool to check it out," I said as I gestured at the lush green mountain. "Isn't that the same mine you said those supposed white eyes came from?" she asked. I hit the clicker to make sure my car was locked and responded eagerly. "Yep, let's go check it out." It took us about 45 minutes to hike to the entrance of the mine shaft, and as we got there, I was so surprised to see that it had not collapsed in. There was also graffiti on the outside saying, "Gates of Hell." "Well, let's go in," I said while walking down into the mine. But my wife grabbed my arm sternly. She said, "I don't have a good feeling about this, Will. I mean, even look at the graffiti." "Look, Lucy, my great-great-grandfather wrote about those things back in 1840. It's 2002 now. More than 150 years have passed since he saw those things. We'll be just fine." "If you say so. But if we die here, I'm blaming you," Lucy said jokingly, as she followed behind me. I pulled out my flashlight and pointed it down the mine shaft. I saw hundreds of eyes staring at me, and all at once, they came at us. We both screamed as we stumbled backward and ran out of the cave as bats skidded up along us. We could feel the wind from their wings brush up against our skin, which sent tingles down our nerves. Both of us fell to the ground and rolled to make sure all of them got off of us. The bats all soon left the cave and we just laid there, taking in deep breaths. "See, honey? Nothing to worry about," I said, chuckling as I looked at her shocked expression. "I swear, if we get some sort of disease from those bats swarming us, then I'm never trusting you again," she said as she got up and brushed the dirt off herself. "All right, let's try this again," I said as I once again pointed the flashlight down the mine and began to slowly shuffle in. The mine shaft had water dripping from the roof, which gathered in puddles on the ground. We avoided them the best we could. I thought for sure they would have put metal bars at the entrance of this thing to keep people out. Old mines like this one are pretty dangerous to be going through. "You say that as we are going through one?" Lucy responded sarcastically. "Well, I'm just saying it as it is," I said as I pointed the flashlight at the walls and said while scratching my head, "Look at all those scrapes into the rock. It's as someone took the tip of their knife and just dug it in randomly." "You are right. It's similar to what a toddler with a crayon would have drawn," Lucy stated as she ducked down to avoid hitting her head on the low ceiling. We continued past a pile of boulders that were scattered across the ground, climbing over them as they scraped up our arms and knees. "I wonder exactly how far those miners were stuck back here," I asked as we hiked deeper into the mine. Lucy let out a long sigh as she said, "Please stop bringing them up. The last thing I want to think about right now is being attacked by humanoid wide-eyed freaks." "Hey, I'm just really interested in how everything went down here. Like, how were those miners able to survive a whole year in a pitch-black cave without food, water, and who knows if they even had oxygen?" I stated while hopping over a boulder and landing on my hands and feet. "You know, Will, there are things in this world that I'm perfectly fine without knowing," Lucy stated frankly. "So this is where it ends," I said as I stared wide-eyed at the piles of rocks blocking the rest of the mine. "Finally, we can head back now and actually have a vacation instead of chasing ghost stories," Lucy said with her arms crossed. "Let me just see if there's a way I can move some of these rocks on top of the pile," I stated with a grunt as I pried up the stiff rocks. They stumbled down to the floor, hitting the cold stone and echoing through the mine. I crawled through the crack that opened up as Lucy begged me not to, squeezing through the small gap between the top of the rocks and the roof of the mine. I finally made it to the other side. "I'm not going over there to get stuck or lost. Also, I'm going to need a flashlight," she said angrily. "Fine, here you go," I said as I tossed the handheld flashlight to her through the gap, and then fashioned a headlamp to my forehead, and I continued saying, "Don't worry, I'll only be gone for a few minutes. I then started to look about the mine shaft. In the background, I could hear her say, "That better be true. If you are not back in 10 minutes, then I'm going to leave without you." A smile came across my face as I continued to walk deeper into the cave, far from where the rocks had piled up, and my toes then bumped something soft on the floor. My eyes darted down, and there was the outframe of a body. I jumped back a little, with shivers running up and down the back of my neck. "What the? That can't be possible," I mumbled to myself as I took my foot and rolled the body onto its front side. I instinctively looked directly at the eyes, wondering if they were what I was hoping them not to be. I blew a sigh of relief to see that they were brown-colored. As I looked closer at the face, it looked as if the person had just died. There were no signs of decay apparent. This whole situation was not what I was expecting to see when I came here. But my eyes then caught the corner of a piece of paper that was sticking out of the body's front pocket. I slowly edged my hand forward, trying my best to limit contact with the body. Grabbing the piece of paper, I noticed how old it was compared to the body it was on, who was dressed in modern-day clothing. When I slid it out, a box of matches fell out also and hit the ground, sounding like a baby rattle. I picked them up and tucked them into my jeans pocket, then looked back at the papers I held in my hand. There were more pieces of papers than I expected, and so I gently opened them, trying not to tear their delicate surface. Inside it read, "Thomas Davis, 1839. The mine shaft collapsed about 30 minutes ago, and I am with 8 other people who are also trapped inside this hellish nightmare. On this here piece of paper, I will utter my last testament to my loved ones to find for when they come to dig up my body." I glanced over slightly what it said, and then gazed at the next page, which started to talk about his last moments in the mine. It read, "We have survived longer than I suspected we would have, but everyone has grown more restless. Our candles have started to wither away, and soon we will be trapped in darkness. There is one man, however, that's not bothered by this, and his name is Edward Jones. He's always been the quiet type, but now he seems elated by what happened, and just whistles while the rest of us wallow in the misery of our death soon to come." That passage ended, and the next one said, "My Lord, save me from these men who wish to do the unpardonable sin. They wish not to die here, but to live forever, as in the words of Edward. He speaks about conjuring the devil and making deals, all of which at the expense of their souls. Only Henry agrees with me, while 7 of the men want to perform the ritual with the last of our candles. I would rather die than partake in what they are doing." My mind began to spin as I read his words. They were like a piece of the puzzle that amazed me as I read it. The air around me grew cold as I thought upon what happened in these cave-like walls that surrounded me. The body lying next to my feet didn't help at all in comforting my frightened heart. I knew I had to get back to where Lucy was, but I was so interested in finding more that could tell me the story behind this that I continued walking as I gently tucked the papers in my side pocket. That's when I heard it. The sound my ancestor described as sandpaper rubbing against metal. My entire soul sunk to my heels, and I instinctively hid behind a boulder that sat against the wall of the mine. I turned off my headlamp and just tucked there in complete darkness, listening to every sound that clattered against the stone while trying to control my breathing. I could hear the beast coming closer. Holding my breath entirely, I could feel as if it was right in front of me. My body shook with its breathing, which was uneven and scratchy. I then heard the crunching bones and smacking of teeth filled with saliva. It must be eating the body. The thought dug into my mind like a tick. I soon could feel as if another one was in front of me, adding to the sound of the cave with its breathing. I was scared to my very soul, and knew that there was only one way out of here, and I would have to pass by those humanoid beasts. Then a voice stuck out over the sounds echoing through the mine. "Honey? Are you in there still? It's been over 10 minutes. It was Lucy, and the wide eyes stood completely quiet. No sound was made at all, as if they just disappeared. I was thinking she was going to be fine. But then, she asked again. This man I just met told me something that you'd be interested in knowing. Can you at least respond to me?" The thing's footsteps echoed through the cave like a spider trapped in a glass jar. They were running towards my wife, and I knew I had to do something, but I was scared to death. But I would live the rest of my life hating myself if my wife died due to my cowardness. I quickly turned on my headlamp and started screaming, "Run, Lucy! Run to the light! Get outside now!" I began to run to the entrance of the cave, and I tripped on the body that was now torn to pieces. But I noticed a strange stick with some string tied onto it, but on closer inspection, I could tell it was dynamite. It clicked in my head on why the man had the matches, the paper, and the dynamite. He was trying to blow them up, but must have died before he was able to do so. So I quickly grabbed the dynamite firmly in my hand and continued to run to the entrance. I could hear more coming from behind me, but I dared not to look back, though I could see the pile of rocks that were ahead of me, and on them were 2 pairs of wide eyes, crawling to the top where I dug a crack through. The light from my headlamp seemed to blind them as their eyes were not adjusted to the light. Every muscle in my body shook in agonizing fear as I crawled up beside their disoriented bodies. But as soon as I started to crawl through the hole, I realized that the headlamp was no longer blinding them, and I could feel my legs being torn into pieces and shredded. I was screaming now, as my wife tried to pull me out, with the help of an old but built man. "Shine your flashlights at them!" I screamed while gritting my teeth at the shooting pain jarring from my legs. My wife let go of my hand temporarily and took her light and shined it in a crack just past one of my legs. We all heard their screeching like nails on a chalkboard, and the man was now able to pull me through the crack, and he thrust me onto his shoulders and started running. While he held me, I took the box of matches out of my pocket and lit the stick of dynamite. I made sure my wife was out of the way as I chucked it behind us. It took about 5 seconds for it to blow up, but when it did, the mine came toppling down. We were safely out of it by then, and finally washed in the beautiful sunlight that came down to rest upon us. I thought I would never see this again, I muttered as I gestured to the sun. "We have to get you back to the hospital, and quick. You're losing a lot of blood," the man said as he carried me on his back. I was happy to think that we were able to blow up the cave and hopefully kill those things once and for all. However, while I tried to stay awake, my eyes kept glancing in and out, but I know I saw, at the entrance of the cave, a single pair of white eyes staring back at me. I wanted to scream, but my weakened frame kept me from doing so, and my eyelids felt so heavy as I drifted off to sleep. I awoke in a hospital bed, with my wife holding my hand and gently running her fingers through my hair. "You're awake. I thought you were going to die," she mumbled as she embraced me tightly. "Where's the man that carried me out?" I asked as I hugged her back. "He left as soon as we got to the hospital. It was strange. While you were exploring past the blockade of rocks, he came up behind me and nearly scared me half to death. We laughed about it, and then he asked why I was there, and I told him that I was with you, and he seemed to panic when I told him that you made it crack in the rocks and crawled to the other side. He told me that when he was young, they had blockaded the mine to keep those things from escaping out. That's when I called for you to come back and you yelled at us to run." I then interrupted her and said, "Yeah, I remember that. But how could it have been blockaded a while ago when there was a freshly killed dead body in there?" Her eyes widened as if she was realizing something, and then she said, "That's where you got the stick of dynamite from. The man told me that one of his family members recently tried to blow those things up and never returned from it, and that he was actually there looking for him." "Did you get his phone number?" I asked intently. She responded, saying with her shoulders shrugged, "He didn't have one, and after that, he just left the hospital and drove away. Never even said goodbye. Although he seemed pretty mad that you had opened up a hole in the blockade of rocks. He told me how dangerous it would have been if one of those things escaped." My heart rate went up on the machine I was hooked up to, and it made intense beeps as I said, "I forgot to tell you guys, but not all of those things were dead or trapped in that mine. It was while the man was carrying me I saw back at the entrance of the mine a pair of white eyes staring at me." After I told her this, we both were terrified of the consequences that could follow from letting that thing escape. And so after we got back to our home state, we made sure to stay tuned on what was happening in that area. There were many strange disappearances, and supposed sightings of the thing, and I laughed when they kept calling it the Rake. I don't blame them, in fact. I mean, it's close to how the Rake looks and is described, but unlike the Rake, it's more than an urban legend. The Rake, for all I know, could be real, but I don't know for sure. But that white eye, it's real and is still out there, wandering the woods. My wife and I are the only ones that truly know its background until now, with you knowing as well. I will finish by saying, be careful when you are wandering the woods at night. For all you know, it could be lurking right behind you. Or it could even enter your room at night, crawling on all fours, and could possibly be in the same room you are in right now.